The Three Down Greencast is brought to you by the Pile of Bones Brewing Company. New taproom now open at Sass Drive and Cameron in Regina. Well, welcome to the Three Down Greencast with Joel Gasson and John Fraser. And I learned a little bit of an interesting tidbit today, reading the excellent column by former Riders General Manager Brendan Tammon that appears in the Star Phoenix and the Leader Post every week. Was that in the 2013 season, former Riders defensive back Dwight Anderson was punished by Corey Chamberlain every time he was fined by the team or the league, which makes me wonder how many times he was fined by the team and we never heard about it.
Right.
Not in a typical way you would normally think, though. It's actually kind of smart. So Corey Chamberlain decided every time that DA was fined, he had to read a book and then do a book report.
That's fantastic.
In pretty quick order for Corey to check over. I don't know if he's graded. I don't know if it had to be presented orally, if it was written. Those details were left out a little bit. I feel like Rob Vanstone needs to get to the bottom of that with Brendan Tammon and really flush that one out, maybe on another episode of Rider Rumblings or something. But yeah. I just read that. I was on my lunch break at work when I read that, and I just laughed and sent it to everyone. I was like, that is just simply amazing and really out of the box thinking as far as I can tell. I don't know we haven't heard of too many other circumstances where that's happened.
Yeah, and not even something you've caught wind of or a former owner, player, GM coming out and saying it. Now, what I always want to know is, and we were talking about this before we started recording, when you started getting into junior high and high school and you had to do a book report and the teachers were like, no. Can't do it on children's books. You can't do it on young fiction. It has to be a real book.
A real book that means something, dang it.
Exactly. I wonder what the guidelines were like for Dwight Anderson. And this is not meant to be a knock on his intelligence, but if he was fined for a uniform violation, was it, okay, Dwight, you got to do the little engine that could. And if he was fined or suspended for an illegal hit, you almost wonder if they made him do something really uncomfortable, 50 Shades of Grey or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, these are the details that we need someone to get to the bottom of, because I'm really fascinated, really curious by this punishment method now. Because it's not a little bit of work. This is a fair bit amount of work for doing something that for getting busted for doing something. So
right,
yeah, this
is on top of the fine.
This is on top of the fine. It's probably worse than the fine, especially if you had to read a full-length, actual book and do a report on it.
Yeah.
I'd be like, can you just fine me again, please? I'll just pay double the fine, please.
I'll just give you even more money. Do not make me do this.
So, in light of that, John, if you were to be punished by your employer, or more likely your wife, for stepping out of line...
Spilling a beer on the bed.
Yeah,
again.
Something like that. What would be a task or subject from, say, elementary school that would just send shivers down your spine and make sure that you learned your lesson?
Arts and crafts. I am not arty. I am not crafty. I see it and I'm like, I just don't want to do it. I am not skilled at all. I would probably get hot glue everywhere, might burn myself, might cut part of my finger off when trying to make snowflake. That hasn't actually happened, for the record. But yeah,
not even macaroni art or something?
No, I'd find a way to screw it up horribly. It would I'd somehow create...
John, why did you cook the pasta first? God damn it.
That's exactly it. It's tasty. I like the pasta. I like, throw some tomato sauce on there, cheese sauce. It's good. Arts and crafts by a mile. How about you, Gasson? Which subject would your punishment be? I don't know. You spill beer on your couch and Jenny comes home and she's like, Joel, all right, you're doing this. And what would make your skin crawl?
For me, and we've actually been talking about this. Where were we talking about this? I forget where. It was around somewhere with some friends or something. It would be the beep test.
Beep test?
You ever do the beep test?
I don't remember what the beep test is.
It's fitness thing. You used to do fitness evaluations.
Oh, yeah.
And you had to run back and forth in the wall of the gym before it beeped.
Oh, right. Yeah,
the beeps got progressively faster as you went.
Right. Yeah, we never had anything like that out in Ontario or out in my neck of the woods.
I was going to say, because I was in Ontario and we had, and I talked to a number of people around Saskatchewan here that also had the beep test.
Yeah, we had like the
well, you had to go. You had to go in the woods and survive. Is that what you did out in the middle of nowhere?
Hey, not even kidding. That is a credit course at my high school.
Yeah.
I am not even kidding you. It's called the Outers program. Look it up. You literally go on a 12-day trip in a canoe for a credit.
Wow.
Yeah, no. Completely legit. Like, I'm not pulling this one out of my rear end. Like, this is a thing. Like, this is not me being me. This is a real thing that happens. We had it was like the 20-minute run where you literally just ran laps around the gym.
Ugh.
And you had to hit a certain number of laps to pass it. So we didn't have the beep, but we had the, all right, run. I almost feel like that was like a teacher hangover day kind of idea. Like, all right, I feel like shit. You bastards go run.
I mean, maybe. I just remember, like, because I am not someone who enjoys running.
Yes.
I do not run at a very fast speed. I'm very good in short bursts, about 60 feet, because that's about as far as it is from home base to first base in my softball league. So that's about the gist of it. I can maybe leg out a double every once in a while. A triple I'm bagged by the end of it. A home run, forget about it. So so that's where I'm at. So I would be eliminated from the beep test pretty early. Well,
that's fair. That's
if we're talking non-physical things, then it would easily just be math. So
no, math has never bothered me, which is probably good considering
you work with numbers now. Yeah, that'd probably be
that would. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not a full-out math nerd, but I'm not a math nerd.
I mean, you wear glasses, so
I do. Thick brimmed ones too. I should maybe put some tape around the middle, really go for the look.
Pocket protector, the whole thing, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Maybe for Halloween that's what I'll do.
People will be like, this guy knows his numbers. I'm buying whatever he's selling.
Warranty, yes. Protection package, yes. Insurance, yes. I'm in all the way with my 300 credit score.
Yeah. So in this episode, we're going to talk, of course, about the Riders losing to the Calgary Stampeders, kind of what that game means. We're going to spin off also to Bo Levi Mitchell's comments at halftime about the officiating and sort of how we felt about the officiating in that game. And then sparked a little bit of not really a controversy on Twitter. A tweet that I sent out kind of blew up more than I was expecting a little bit. It had to do with attendance across professional sports, because we talked about the attendance in the CFL a lot this year, and it's becoming pretty obvious now that this is not a CFL specific kind of thing. So we, in the name of fairness, we'll have to touch on that as well. So before we get to all that, as usual, John, what's in the glass this week?
Well, I'm surprised it's taken me this long to get a sample or a try of this, but during Thanksgiving dinner, first off, I walked in and it was a little late. I had to work Saturday. We did ours on Saturday, so a lot of Lacey's family was up. Love seeing them, having a great time. But as soon as I walked in, the discussion was all about politics.
Oh, boy.
And then I found in the corner of my in-laws' living room is Lacey's cousin, Ryan, who's about the same age as I am, and we've always been, got along pretty well. I found him sitting in the corner by himself, and I went, so let's talk about craft beer instead of politics. And we proceeded to list off our favorite craft beers, most of which I've sampled right here on the show. But he says, well, have you tried Blackbridge's Wheat Burst yet? Mm-hmm. And I said, I haven't. So the very next day, I went and picked up a four-pack of Tall Boys of Blackbridge's Wheat Burst. Fruity, hoppy, unfiltered is what it says right on the can. And basically a nice summary of it. It is a nice, again, more of a summer beer, a lighter beer, but I'm more into the lighter beers. I'm not as much of a stout, dark guy as you are, Joel, but no, it's very good. If you like a lot of the recommendations I've put forward so far on the podcast, I imagine you'll also like Wheat Burst. I should also say, I also went to a wedding on the Sunday at the Capitol Music Club, where I was quite thrilled that, normally you think Saskatchewan wedding, it's like pill, kokanee, Bud Light. No. This was at a bar, so I was on lentil cream the entire night, and the hangover that next day wasn't that bad.
There was no pulsing Sorry.
I see what you did there, because lentils a false crop. That was good, Joel. That's dad joke territory. I might steal that from you.
Absolutely, you should, as an actual dad. For me, I am drinking something that's new to Saskatchewan this week. The Rebellion's new blackberry sour smoothie. It's got blackberries in it, obviously. It's a bit of a sour hit note and also a little bit of a creamy lactose note as well. So it kind of hits all the nice corners a little well. Kind of a nice fall sour where it's a little darker, a little tardier rather than like fruity and light. So it drinks a touch heavier, which is a nice for a sour this time of year compared to, say, the Pile of Bones cranberry kettle sour or along those lines that are just super light and refreshing and you want to drink like 1,000 of them when it's 30 degrees out.
Or when Joel's getting married.
That too. That as well. So the Riders, they lost to the Calgary Stampeders, as we all know at this point.
Yeah.
And it was an interesting football game. I thought it was really a tale of two games. I thought the first half, both teams were kind of holding back a little bit, but also being kind of dumbasses at the same time. It's probably a good way to describe it. It was just a bizarre sort of start to the football game. And the second half, I thought the second half was well-played football between two very good teams. So there was a bit of a yin and a yang to that game, and at the end of the day, the Riders lost by 2, and it's kind of left two prevailing thoughts in my mind. We're going to get into this a little bit now, and that's, number one, if you've seen the piece on 3 Down Nation, Ryan Ballentine, our guy out of Calgary, I know. He's a self-admitted troll, so, I mean, I respect him for what he does. He knows who he is, and he sticks by it, and everything he says he actually believes. So, number one.
True. And I love the fact that Ryan is such a, and I'm going to expose him a bit. He's a great shit disturber, but if you get the chance to actually talk to him, get to know him personally. I've known Ryan, I've met him a few times through sports. Great human being, but guy loves stirring shit up.
Oh, absolutely. That you don't get that. You don't get on Big Brother without being something like that, right? So
no, exactly.
So he had the piece. He wrote the piece where basically the gist of it is that he felt the score kind of flattered the Riders, and I don't disagree with that. Watching the game as it developed and the way it played out, it didn't really feel like a 2-point win for Calgary to me, at least. I don't know, I'm not saying the Riders should have been blown out in that game, but the Calgary offense moved enough that you thought it probably should have been somewhere in that touchdown, maybe 10-point differential rather than 2 points. At least that's how I kind of feel is how that game actually played out.
Yeah, no, and I would agree with you there, Joel. And that's I love that Ryan can come out and make a bold statement like that and sound like he's trolling Rider fans and be actually quite right. The Riders have had a handful of games like that through this year that, they were pulling ahead, they were pulling away from the other team, and you and I have said it that the score flattered the other team, and that was the other way around. You never really had a moment of this game, that you're like, okay, I think this is it. This is the drive. This is the momentum shift. This is what's going to turn things around for the Riders. It just seemed like, although both teams were very good, it did seem like Calgary was just a tick better than the Riders on that night.
Yeah, and I really think the difference in the game came down to quarterback play. Not that Cody Fajardo was bad, but when you watch him play against Bo Levi Mitchell is where you notice the difference between an elite quarterback and a guy who's still kind of figuring things out a little bit.
Yeah.
And I know we've hacked a little bit on Glenn Suter at times, but he was 100% correct, and I brought this up in the column when he was talking about Fajardo and the way he was looking down receivers and looking down sides of the field. It made it very easy for the Calgary defense to pick that up. And the Calgary defense has been one of the defenses in this league that's been able to figure out Fajardo because they don't really let him progress through a whole lot of looks just yet. He's still very RPO. He's very, first read run kind of thing. So that really makes it somewhat easier to defend if you have a defense that's, properly prepared to do that. And Calgary is definitely one of those defenses. So they need to figure out something with Fajardo for when likely these teams meet in the West Final. Whether it's in Calgary or Saskatchewan, that's yet to be seen. But there has to be sort of an evolution in his game a little bit heading into that game, I think, for the Riders to have a really good shot at winning that game. I think we'll get into it in a second. I don't think they're doomed because they lost this game by any stretch of the imagination. But that was basically the difference in this game, was you have arguably the best quarterback in the league and a pretty good quarterback that is clearly still growing as a starting professional quarterback.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Joel. And I think the other thing that didn't help either was the vintage Kurt ankle lock right near the end of the half there that was sustained by Fajardo. He looked to be a little shaken up by that whole thing and got him away from the run a little bit. But actually, as we're recording this, I'm watching a replay of the game. It's just early in the third quarter here. But you talked about Bo Levi Mitchell's ability to look guys off. They just went through a brief highlight pack where Bo's looking one way and snaps it back the other way, knowing his receiver is going to be there. He knows that guy is open. And you're right. Cody Fajardo is, I would say, very good. Definitely, he honestly, the way the injuries have gone, he's going to probably end up leading the league in passing yards by the time this thing's all said and done. But he's not elite. He's not a guy like Bo Levi Mitchell yet, who, yeah, I'm with you. I still think he's the best quarterback in the CFL until he's dethroned. But to your point, you're right. I don't. At no point, we were talking that the score, flatter the Riders a little bit here, but this doesn't remind me of even a few years ago when the Riders would go into Calgary and you just knew that what was going to happen. You knew that no matter how good that Rider team seemed to be, no matter how hot they would come in, they were just going to shit the bed in Calgary because Calgary was that good. And this game, you watch it, and it's one of those that, if a play is made here or there, maybe Powell, breaks out a long run here. Maybe Fajardo doesn't get banged up. Maybe he finds a couple guys deep, is able to escape for a couple of large plays. It's maybe that turns around. And that's an encouraging sign for this Rider team to go into Calgary and have, some success. It's not like the old days of just getting blown out and this being some sort of doom factory for them. So they know they can go in. They know they can win in Calgary. And if they have to, which, pending something crazy happening, like the Bombers actually showing up for a game or two, it looks like that this season is set up to go through Calgary to the Grey Cup like it has been so many times in the past few years.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is you bring up, and they go into Calgary and it doesn't feel like they're doomed. And to bring up, not to sound like we're being sponsored by Post Media in this episode or anything like this, but in Tammon's column, that was basically the crux of Brendan Tammon's column was that the last, that game felt like the one in 2013 because the Riders always seem to go into Calgary late in the season for whatever reason. Yeah. And in that game, they lost a close one. But they all felt like it was a springboard to what eventually happened in the West Final, and now that's where the Dwight Anderson thing came up because as a gamer he famously said Calgary sucks and the whole thing like that, right? So that's why he got into that a little bit. But the general idea of the column was they felt like that was a game that they learned from it and they said this isn't going to happen again. We're going to fix our mistakes and go from there. And you brought up the interesting point as well of some missed plays, and this was basically. The idea of my column postgame on 3downnation.com was, despite the fact that maybe the Riders weren't as close as the score seemed and some dumb penalties and this and that, if you can talk about him as play, we can talk about the very first drive of the game, I believe it was, where Cody Fajardo had Shaq Evans wide open and either Evans gave up on the route or Fajardo overthrew him or a bit of both. There was wide open for a touchdown there. And I just said this, at that point I was like, oh, they're going to regret that. And you have to think about how would that game have gone had they scored that touchdown. Yes. Would have it been off to the races for the offense in the rest of that game? I think maybe. I think it might have been.
Yeah, and I think it's the confidence build. When you are playing a team like Calgary, they seem like, and you've seen it largely in their Grey Cup losses, if you can find a way to make them bleed their own blood, one of course my favorite lines in cinema history, if you can find a way to make them bleed their own blood a little bit, it seems like that swagger that is built from Bo Levi Mitchell out for the rest of that team gets knocked down a peg, right? They seem like much more vulnerable of a football team. So to say that, and of course, when you lose a 2-point game, and you had a wide open, opportunity to score 6 early on in the game. It is one of those that you think that's how you beat Calgary. You punch them in the mouth. You punch them in the mouth as early as you can. And that would have been like a strong right cross of the jaw of the Calgary Stampeders. But instead it's missed. Calgary comes out and does Calgary things. But again, not to the point that if you're a Rider fan, if you're in that team, I'm sure the post-game message to that team was, hey, we're going to have to come here and win again. Or we're going to have to beat them again in some capacity, and we know we can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a big difference. And you talk about punching in the mouth early. That's basically what the 2013 West Final was.
Oh, yeah.
That was just one punch after another, and that game was over by like halftime.
Oh yeah, and I remember going to a friend's house to watch that game, thinking, okay, great, like this is going to be a great football game. This is going to be, oh wow, wow. And next thing you know, all your friends are drunk because they're celebrating, and it's a great time, and everybody's, who doesn't love the occasional blowout in the playoffs, right? Like playoffs is such a high stress situation that sometimes
when it involves the team that you were a fan of. So when you're a neutral observer, you want every single playoff game to be close and dramatic and as crazy as possible. When it is your team,
you want to get drunk with your Rider fan buddies.
Well, even then you can do that while it's all that anyway. But
that's fair.
When you're watching, like, say I'm watching a Steeler playoff game or something, yeah, you want that game to be like 50-0 at the half, so you can just relax.
100%. And my entire lifetime, being a Winnipeg Blue Bomber fan and having to see,
it's usually over by half the other way.
Oh, there's so many games that are over by half. I can't think the last time. We usually get all together with my buddy Mike and his wife Marlena and some friends of theirs. We'll watch the Bomber playoff game, and like clockwork, it's just the bed shittery every single time, and it's a drown your sorrows kind of drunk, and that's nowhere near as fun as the celebration drinks.
No, not at all. A guy who you think might have been drinking before the game was, of course, Bo Levi Mitchell, and not because of his play or anything like that, but an interesting comment he had at halftime to, I believe, Jermaine Franklin was doing the game. He basically came out and said that the officiating was being biased toward the Saskatchewan Roughriders.
Yes.
And that instantly caught my attention, and it caught pretty much everyone's attention. And it was a mind-boggling comment, and apparently I think I've read some things that Dave Dickinson might have been saying some of the same stuff, maybe not quite so publicly.
Yes.
Which in some ways doesn't surprise me, the way they think around there sometimes. But it was just like, really? This is what you're going to come out and say at this point? And yeah. I get frustrations with officiating in the heat of the moment, all that it happens. But to accuse that so openly, and I'm surprised, I don't know, maybe I missed it, but I haven't heard anything about a fine yet, which definitely should be coming.
Yeah, you would think so, yeah.
But it was just an odd comment, number one, because it wasn't true, and number two, even if it were, like, what is to be gained by saying this to a TSN reporter at halftime? It was just such a weird thing to really be going off about at that point.
But you almost wonder, Joel, and I mean, we all know that Al Bradbury did this game.
Yes, and we'll get into that in a second.
Yeah, you almost wonder if that's one of those that I don't think either side, like, it's rare you go on Twitter and you see both sides just trashing the hell out of the referee in a football game.
Mm-hmm.
And you almost wonder if that wasn't a shot across the bow to Al Bradbury and his crew. You know, it looked like it was a strange comment from Bo Levi. It was the timing of it I found odd. The openness of it I found odd, but
I mean, I respect the openness in one way because it's actually something interesting. So we're not blasting him for saying it from a media perspective.
Oh God, no. And actually, personally, I know you have to protect your refs, but personally, I'd love to see the CFL just kind of tell him, like, come on, Bo, you can't do that on the broadcast, all right? And not fine the guy because, again, like we've talked about it, how shitty sports interviews can be with so many players. Like, it's nice to see some emotion and some fire, even though if it was a little strange and misguided, if you will. But you almost wonder, like, I know myself as a ref, if I heard that, I'd remember that.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate to say it, but a lot of officials at a lot of levels in a lot of sports, I know a handful of them, I've been one myself, you tend to hold grudges. There's something about being an official that you tend to hold a grudge on a guy sometimes. And you go, you called me out on national TV. I'm going to remember that. Right? Now,
well, most refs would.
Right. But now, all that being said, the guy that he was calling out is pretty well deserving of it.
Yeah, I think so.
When both teams comment on the officiating, and I saw some people on Twitter saying, well, that means it was well officiated. No, it's not.
It means it was fairly officiated. Doesn't mean it was well officiated.
No, it was fairly shitty on both sides.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the fact is there are, and you and I were talking about it, Ed Bradbury versus a guy like like the guy from Saskatoon now, Croker, I believe is his last name. Tim Croker. I don't think I've ever seen anybody take a shot at Tim Croker, and that's a good thing, right? If Andre Proulx didn't occasionally say illegible instead of eligible, would we notice games he does?
Probably not, no.
But it just seems to me like the CFL officiating, especially after watching the NFL shit show on Monday night, is generally pretty solid, except for Al Bradbury, because you see when Bradbury's doing the game, and either you tweeted or you texted me about it, saying, "Oh, great, Bradbury's doing this game," and it was huh. And the minute you go on social media, that kind of stuff's going to be happening.
Yeah, and so the officiating was bad, and in my post-game columns, I generally don't like to write about officiating, but
no, especially as two guys that I've never I've attended. When I did play-by-play, I attended referee courses to have a knowledge of the rules.
Yep.
To make sure I was never left without something to say in complicated situations. But God, I've never reffed a game of football in my life, and so I'm with you. I don't like commenting on the officials. I don't like bringing this up, but
like
it was a shitty job.
Yeah, in every game, there's going to be a weird call here or there, and that kind of evens out. But this was just an all-around, it's kind of a poorly officiated game, and because as much as, some people can argue that the ankle twisting and the spearing and all that went away, but then there was the PI call on Ed Gainey that looked super weak.
Yeah.
I mean, TSN didn't do anyone any favors by only showing the one angle of the guy's back where you couldn't see anything.
Yeah.
That's a whole other issue. So, Ed Gainey needs to do better and keep his head together after that and not tack on another 15 yards on top of that.
Yeah.
But there was just a lot of it calmed down a little bit in the second half. In the first half, there was just such a big storyline that I had to talk about it, even though I don't like to. And for me, I don't even blame Al Bradbury. For me, it came down to this is a known situation. Fans across the league know Al Bradbury for this reason. I think in some fans' eyes, Al Bradbury is the ref that people think Andre Proulx is.
Right.
And they put Al Bradbury in a tough spot, calling a game he probably shouldn't have, or at least maybe he's fine. It's his crew that's bad. I don't know. Whatever the situation is, in a game of that magnitude, he's probably not the guy, because I don't ever really remember him going that deep into the playoffs where your season rankings kind of matters at that point.
Yeah, for sure.
So why was he doing this game? Why wasn't he doing Toronto and Ottawa instead? And you send out Croker or Proulx or, Ben Major or any one of these other guys to call this game, because, and I tweeted this, I believe I tweeted this, or I texted some people this, at least after the game, after the Monday Night Football game, and how the debacle of an ending that was for the officials.
Oh, that was brutal.
Even though the Lions are fully deserving for losers for blowing so many opportunities to score, but at the same time, there were some really, really awful calls that affected the outcome of that game. And my thought was, I think for the first time ever this year, I can say CFL officials are better, at least so far, than the NFL officials. And that's not to say that I ever thought NFL officials were better. I just thought I used to see them on kind of a level playing field in terms of how often they blew bad calls. I think this year it is heavily skewing towards the NFL on that side, to be clear.
No, and you're absolutely bang on, which is funny for the NFL apologists you always talk to. They talk about the fact that these refs are doing the CFL reffing is a part-time job. So like, if they have a shitty game or two, there's a fair excuse. Like, this is like every one of these guys has a full-time 9-to-5 job. The NFL, their guys are full-time and making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. They there really is no excuse. So I'm with you, Joel. Minus this game, there's been a few other rough patches.
It happens every once in a while, right? But
overall, it's always going to happen. But yeah, overall, compared to what the NFL's brought forth this year, it's just, it's night and day. It's been genuinely solid. And the thing is, you are bang on the fact that they adjust crew. Well, your crew's set, but they purge a bunch of guys. Like, no rookie official works past, I believe, week 8, because a friend of mine was a rookie official this year. A different friend of mine was a rookie official 2 years ago.
Wait, you have two friends?
Acquaintances of mine, I should say. What I should be saying, my friend. But yeah, there's you and my wife and
she has to be your friend.
True, and you don't have to be, so.
No, but I don't know. I guess I feel pity or something. I don't know.
Well, you could have revealed that before you stay at your house in 2 weeks. But you're right. The CFL does take it seriously, and there has been, as we sit here and talk about, both teams being upset and the game not being well officiated, there haven't been many long conversation blunders this year.
No, there's nothing really to me that stands out as a defining call of something that we've been talking about for weeks after the fact. I don't remember a major officiating moment this season, to be honest with you.
Which is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a great thing, and considering that you and I that watch so many games can only name by name, realistically, one guy because of his accent. Let's be honest here. We can name one guy because of his accent, one guy because he's notoriously shitty, and another guy because he's from the city I live in.
And I remember Ben Major because he did the last game I watched.
That's fair. I had no idea who Ben Major was. He could have been a porn star for all I care. Ben Major kind of sounds like a porn name, all right? So I'm just going to roll with this. I'm going to trust
There's
Joel.
Kim Murphy as well. That's another official in the league.
Another porn name.
So what
Am I wrong?
What is for sure is that fans don't come out to watch the officiating. Unless, though, I learned before we started recording that officials have tickets at games, which actually makes a lot of sense, because I'm sure their friends and family like to come watch them as well. But regardless...
Except to steal your joke, except for Al Bradbury's fans.
Maybe, yeah. So, 99.99999% of fans in the stadium are there to watch the players.
Yes.
And not the officials. But we've been noticing across the CFL, and it's been a bit of a talking point this year, that attendance is down for the most part, though I think I saw Danny Austin saying Calgary's actually up a tick this year.
Which is good. Which again, I think might be a byproduct from things not going back to the way they were, but things stabilizing a little in Alberta.
It's up a tick, but it's basically flat, which I guess for the CFL this year is kind of up.
It's true.
Maybe finally winning the Grey Cup, it's such a small number that there could be a number of factors.
Right.
But so it's been a conversation across the CFL all year that basically everyone else attendance is down.
Yeah.
The Riders having the smallest drop. Edmonton's kind of been up and down. They did the smart thing and introduced that general admission pass, which I think has helped.
Yeah.
Then of course we saw what happened in Winnipeg this week, and that got some people talking about attendance. But there was 100%. 100% real reasons why a number of people did not go to that football game, and they all make 100% sense. And if you thought otherwise, you're a complete idiot.
Yes, agreed, absolutely.
And that's about all we're going to say about that. We don't need to make any hot takes and then plan an apology for the next day.
2 days later, after you double down on it. Don't forget about that.
Yeah. So, but the interesting thing is what we're starting to see as more sports kind of kick off this year, because the CFL opens in kind of a void of sports for the most part, as it opens up in the middle of baseball season where, the diehards are watching, but a number of people have tuned out, so you can't really gauge too much on June baseball attendance numbers, quite frankly.
Right. You're absolutely right.
But now, the NHL is starting again. The NFL has been up and running for a few weeks. The NBA is just around the corner, so they'll kind of be interesting to watch what happens there. Pretty much everyone, it seems, is at best flat or down when it comes to attendance. And we're talking individual teams here, not leagues. I think league-wide, probably all of them are down a little bit. You're even seeing, NFL stadiums. I see, if you follow on Twitter, there's the Empty Seats Galore account.
Yes.
Which is a fabulous account that shows you empty stadiums. Even a place like Baltimore, the Washington Football Club has struggled for years to sell out their mammoth stadium. Baltimore's down this year. You're seeing a lot of places where numbers are down, and the interesting tweet, and I generally don't like his tweets because I think Ken Campbell of the Hockey News is a dinosaur, but
yes,
he did have the interesting thought of, was the other day, I think it was 4 of the 6 Canadian teams, or however, 7 Canadian teams are on the NHL, played in one night, and only Toronto sold out.
Yeah.
And of course, Winnipeg, okay, there's still lingering effects of the storm, I'm sure, so whatever on that one. But you still had Ottawa, which, I mean, we don't need to get into the reasons there because this is not a hockey podcast.
No, exactly. With their tarped off upper deck too. They're not selling out while tarping off large sections of their upper deck.
Well, they removed the tarps last year, actually.
Oh, it shows how close attention I pay to the Ottawa Senators.
Yeah, you and everyone else. So there's issues there. Montreal didn't sell out, which is interesting. Vancouver didn't sell out, which they don't often much anymore anyway, because their markets. There's lots of reasons why in there as well. I believe Calgary is a little short as well. And so it really makes you think, because that's kind of, I think in sports in Canada, that's kind of the canary in the coal mine situation, where teams that generally in sports that always sell out, and maybe we should have seen it a little bit with the Riders, if that's dipping, no one's safe, quite frankly.
No, and you're absolutely right, and you've been able to watch this, in the old job where I would be closer following the Western Hockey League, and I'd be closer following the SJHL and all this kind of, Junior B and things like that. That to me was also a canary in the coal mine situation, in which you started seeing across the board, people were still going to the more expensive events, Rider games, Rush games, in NHL cities, the NHL games. And that also started taking a dip there at your grassroots level. And now that it's happening at the major league level, can I say I'm surprised? To be honest, I don't think I am, Joel. I think it is so much easier to sit at home, walk to the store, get a bag of chips, walk to the liquor store, get a 6-pack of something, and basically have the same experience with your friends, with your family, than it is to actually go to a game. And the CFL is still, relatively affordable, right?
Yep.
I
it can be better, but yes, relatively speaking.
It could be better, yes. But I mean, compared to me spending $325 on a Heritage Classic ticket
to sit outside at 8:00 at night in the end of October,
after day drinking with you all day. Let's not forget the day drinking. I'll feel nice and warm. It's and that's your going price for tickets in NHL City, and all jokes aside,
let's not even get started on NFL tickets in the States.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Unless you're lucky enough to be one of the people who's able to get it on face value, it's not as bad. But It's hard to get face value NFL tickets for the most part.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing too is so now you've got the advent of TV and on demand and streaming services, and it's easier than ever to get access to all the sports you want in the comfort of your own home. Now, B, I mean, I haven't been. Let's face it. When I go to a game, NHL or whatever, I mean, I've paid a premium for playoff Jets tickets and Heritage Classic tickets. My routine is usually go to a bar, have some drinks, eat. Like, for me, it's an event, right? I see it like once in a while, but I couldn't imagine the thought of leaving work at 6:00 and having to eat at a hockey game, a football game. Like, I mean, like, we're talking, like, have you seen some of the prices for concession? It's
for below average food for the most part.
Exactly. Absolutely. And usually below average beer that they're charging an arm and a leg for. So it's a perfect culmination of things. And you're right. When NHL teams aren't selling out across the country, and NFL teams aren't selling out, and Major League Baseball teams aren't selling out playoff games, you're going.
And from what I understand, this is extends outside of North America, where a lot of the European soccer leagues and rugby leagues are struggling with the same thing.
Yeah, but on the same note, it was your tweet, and I should let you say it because it's just that good about the common man.
Yeah. So essentially, the empire that, and it's my opinion, is the empire that is pro sports today was built on, the interest of Joe and Jill Public. There would not be pro sports if it wasn't for the average fan over the years. And it feels now, with with all the corporate seats and boxes and all this sort of thing, that we've essentially been forgotten. And in the long run, that's not healthy for any league. I don't care what acronym your league is. That's not good for your league if the average fan is not willing to spend the money. Whether they can afford it or not isn't the question. You could be a billionaire and you could say, no, I don't want to spend $200 to go to a game. It doesn't matter. The point remains is, do you think this is good value for your money? And right now, more and more people are saying no. And as soon as you stop going to, a game or two a year, that game or two becomes 2 or 3, becomes 3 or 4, becomes 5 or 6, and beyond, depending on how many games your favorite team plays within a year. And it just becomes easier and easier to not go, and you fall out of the habit. And that's a problem. As much as, the TV money and all this is great, and maybe there's going to be future money there thanks to the internet and all that, maybe that will continue to exist because content will always be king, and maybe the sports will evolve to play in smaller stadiums with big broadcast rights money, and everything will be honky-dory. I'm not quite so convinced that's going to happen, because I think ultimately they're going to need a fan revolution to get people back to make the games exciting again. Otherwise, it's going to fall by the wayside, at least traditional sports as we know it today. There are always other options, because there's a great tweet I got from Grant here, where he says, "Where's the next generation of fans when parents can't afford to take kids to a game growing up? Corporate proxies are fine and all, until the CEO grew up playing Fortnite, not watching hockey. Greed will catch up to the owners and players eventually."
Beebs is right. I mean, Grant is full disclosure. Grant's been my boss before and a very long time friend. I mean, he's a guy with good head on his shoulders, and his point is so clear. Like I look at myself, you know, and I'm not trying to humble brag here. I could go to every Rider game if I wanted. I go to every Rider game. I could get pissed up. I could stay in a hotel that night. I can do that, and I don't want to.
No.
Because the bang for my buck is not there. You know, I could have Blade season tickets. I want to. The bang for my buck is not there because I can sit at home and watch it in high definition and everything like that. Now, you mentioned the fan revolution.
Yeah, and when you're at home, you have it on high definition. You can drink what you want. You can eat what you want. You're not surrounded by idiots. There isn't the possibility of a fight breaking out around you. There isn't some people saying inappropriate things around your children. It's a controlled environment that is just far more enjoyable, quite frankly.
If Max gets bored of watching the game, he can play Nintendo while I watch the game. That's on Sundays. Usually, Lacey goes out of the house at some point. Me and the boys sit in the basement and watch, NFL Red Zone. Max gets bored. He plays his games. Connor is just, he's one. He's just wandering around the basement, right? Like, it's Hakuna Matata. It's everything I want it to be. Like, and I don't have those stresses if I'm at a game. And you mentioned the fan revolution, and there's two markets that come to mind. And one, we talked about the Edmonton Eskimos general admission tickets and free tickets for the kids in the summer. Mm-hmm. That, to me, is the things that even the teams that are selling out need to start looking at doing. You look what the Atlanta Falcons have done. Now, the Atlanta Falcons, you still pay a premium for the ticket to go to an Atlanta Falcons game, but concession prices, you can get a hot dog for $2 in Atlanta. So basically the Falcons have gone, okay, we're still going to charge a premium, but I mean, it's one thing to say, if you and I want to go to a Falcons game, hey, Joel, the tickets are $100 a pop. Yeah. But hey, we can get beers for $4. We can get a couple hot dogs for $2. You're taking the parking element out of it, with cheap parking. You're taking the cost of food element out of it. I'm willing, all jokes aside, I'm willing to pay a premium for my Heritage Classic tickets because I know damn well I'm probably not going to eat a thing at the game because you and I will be at the Pile of Bones Tap House right up until the anthems, right? Like, we'll be there with my buddy Jay, and I'll be well fed and half in the bag. So it's just and nobody's going to be proactive about it.
No,
but I think
these industries and the billionaires that control them are always reactive to everything, and they're slow moving.
Exactly, and I will give kudos the Edmonton Eskimos on being proactive and the Atlanta Falcons for being proactive. And I would love to see, and I think we've talked about it on this podcast, I'm the kind of guy, if I'm going to Regina, if I'm taking my trip from Saskatoon to Regina, I'm buying good seats. But
if you're only going to go to like a game a year, you might as well make it worth it.
Exactly. But on the same breath, I would love the option that if I was in Regina for whatever reason, whether it be work, whether it be whatever. I remember one of the best nights I had at a football game. I was in Edmonton just visiting some buddies. And we got student tickets way up in the nosebleeds. $10 a pop. Yeah. And it's going to be the teams that start bringing that back. Whether it's NHL, whether it's NLL, whether it's CFL, whether it's MLS. It's going to be the first guys that start doing that are going to start bringing some people back.
100%.
If you want to still charge an arm and a leg for your really good seats, go ahead. All the power to you. People are still going to buy those.
Yep.
But it reminds me of old stories of my father-in-law he's talking about back in the day when he lived in Regina, and you could sit on a grass knoll at Mosaic Stadium with a 2.6 of whiskey that you barely had to sneak in. You just had to ask for the security guard to drink and just get plastered and watch football.
Yeah. I remember when I was in university, when I was a hockey fan, the Senators, they used to have the student rush games where you got an email like the day of the game, and it was like, okay, this is your offer right now. It's like $15. Come get this ticket and do standing room. I'd be like, cool, yeah, I'll go tonight.
Yeah.
Right? And then it got someone in the door. And granted, I didn't really buy anything there because I was a student, but it was still, there was someone in the door. And I think you need to get the fans going to the games again to build that connection, because it's, for us at our age now, it's fine. We have the connections with the teams that we follow and the sports that we love. But if you don't do that when you're young, and all they do is watch it on TV, you're never really going to appreciate the game fully, I don't think, because it's still watching a game live is still very different than watching it on television.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
And it's not like it used to be where you just go down and sit and watch the game and blah, blah, blah. So the entertainment and all that surrounding games when you go needs to be better, and I get that. But yeah, so it comes down to pricing and making sure that people can afford, so you can actually build this connection with the team again. I think we see it in Saskatchewan even a little bit, where the connection of the fan base and the team isn't quite what it used to be. It's still pretty strong in this province, but it's still not quite there. And you're seeing, Toronto, it's completely gone, basically, with the Maple Leafs, the Habs, these big teams that basically sell out all the time, and it's all corporate seats. The fans growing up today don't really get a chance to go, and you don't really build that true love connection for a team. And maybe that's why their interest, especially in like Toronto, where you're starting to see that more with like the Raptors versus the Maple Leafs.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, Joel. I think two things have happened, and this is why basketball to me is going to be an interesting case study. Football as a whole, I still plan on putting my boys in football, but concussions are a real fear. Yeah, they're scary. I've had 5. They're terrifying. They're a real fear that people have about, putting their kids into football and loving football. And I know that football's doing a lot of things like moving some contact and moving to flag focused programs. And I don't know what the game's going to look like when Max is potentially playing high school football. I imagine it will be different from what it looks like now. Yeah. Hockey. I've said it on this podcast before. My kids aren't going to play hockey. No. If I
have kids, I'm doing everything I can to make sure they don't play hockey either.
100%. 100% I am. Because, Max has no interest in skating at 4 years old. I'm totally okay with that. Yeah. Because
not even from a safety perspective, the game is just too damn expensive to play. Forget everything else.
That's exactly it.
Which is a whole other issue. Which is a whole other issue for hockey, but yeah.
Exactly. So, to me, basketball is the case study in attendance, and I get it. We only have the one team, but it's cheap. I took Max out to play basketball for the first time ever because there's a yard
public
sale.
Courts everywhere, and all you need is a ball.
And we were at a yard sale, and the ball was free. They had a basketball. They had an outdoor basketball that was free, and I'm like, yeah, I will take that. Let's go shoot some hoops, bud. That's why it is such an interesting case study, and it'll be an interesting case study across the states as well, because it is cheap, and I think kids are always going to be drawn to the sport that they play. And I think more and more parents are, keeping kids out of football because of the concussion issues, and they're keeping kids out of hockey because nobody needs a second mortgage on their house just to afford, or nobody needs a second mortgage on their house and wake their kids up at 5 a.m. on a school day to go out and, play shinny at a small town rink half an hour away.
At your job, do you ever have to deal with a nose roller? How about a snub pulley? Well, if you're installing a new conveyor belt system, dealing with the different components can sound like you're speaking a foreign language. Luckily, you've got a team ready to help. Grainger's technical product specialists are fluent in maintenance, repair, and operations. So whenever you want to talk shop, just reach out. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.